Hello, everyone. I am Jo Flick with the Montana State Library, and it is time for us to start talking about the 2020 census and how that might be impacted by the work that you're doing in the library and how your work might be impacted. So how you can impact the census and the census can impact you. So let's get started, okay? So we're going to take some time today to talk about how you, as a librarian, can assist patrons in accessing the census form. And that's because we think that most people will be completing their census online this time. So we expect that you may have people come into the library and say, I'd like to complete my census online. Can you help me access the form? So one little basic thing we want you to be able to do. We're also hoping that libraries will plan programs that promote a complete count in Montana. And we have some ideas for that, and we'll be continuing to provide resources and coordinating those in the spring and later winter and spring. We want every librarian to be able to articulate why a complete count is important to our state and to your community and your library. So I'm going to share a little bit of information about that today. We're also going to start right off with the foundation of the US Census in the US law. So starting in the US Constitution this morning. And we'll address some common concerns that we've heard from people about the consensus and answer any of your questions. And I'm happy to say we have Yihan on the line today from the US Census Bureau, and she's a partnership specialist based in Helena, Montana, so she can answer any questions hopefully I can't answer. And she's promised me that if she can't answer them, she'll find that answer and get back to us. So welcome, Yihan. I'm sure.
Ma'am, thanks. And actually,
Yihan,
Jerry
thank you.
Busey from Helena is also, Jerry Busey from Helena, she's also a partnership specialist with the Census Bureau. She's on the call as well. So if I can't answer it, hopefully Jerry can help me.
Jerry?
And if we don't have an answer, we'll definitely get back to you with an answer.
And Jihan, right? Did I get it better that time? Because I'm really having trouble pronouncing your name. I apologize. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Here we go. So we're wondering, we're going to start off with a little question, and I hope you'll answer in the chat box or unmute your microphone. How are you planning or already participating in promoting a complete count in your community? So we've heard a lot of librarians are on complete count committees already. Some librarians are chairing the complete count committee in their county. And then if you're not willing to share that, how about what is your greatest concern about the 2020 census and your library? So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to think about that and type an answer into the chat box or open your mic and just get into the conversation. And Nicole, if you've just arrived, I'm waiting for folks to just respond in the chat box to these first two little questions about the census.
This is Christine from Plains. We actually have a staff member who has worked the census before and will be doing it again. So our concerns are really how to involve the library.
Oh, great. So you have kind of a person who's had some experience right in the building. Anyone else want to jump in here? Mary Kay. And Mary Kay, your mic's live, so we can actually hear you typing. If you want to mute that, that'd be great. My older generations that are opposed to doing online, oh, of course. Well, I think I can help with that, and I'll let our census folks roll in, but you can certainly print out a form for them if they would prefer to mail in a form. That's going to be acceptable. Jihan, Jerry? Someone doesn't want to complete the form online, it's okay for them to mail in, for the librarian to print off a form and mail it in, right? Let them mail it in. Good.
They can mail in a form. Yeah, if they don't want to do it via phone or online, they can mail in a form for sure.
Great. And welcome Lisa, who's another member of the board in Plains, Montana, who's with us today. So
I'll just give you a little more detail about how it's going to work in terms of mailing the form or when you will get a paper form. So initially, if you have a regular street style address, not a post office box, not a rural route, if you have a regular street style address, you will be invited to participate right around the first couple weeks of March. You will get a postcard that has your code and how to access it online, and you can call in to a phone number and you will get that information on a postcard. You will get 2 of those before, and if you still haven't responded by the 2 of those postcards, you will eventually get mailed a paper form. It will not come immediately, but you will get mailed a paper form within the first few weeks. But they are trying to solicit doing it online and by phone because it's way less expensive. So if you do not have a regular style mailbox,
if you're if you don't get rural delivery or don't get if mail isn't delivered to your home.
Exactly. Then you will be in a process that we call update leave, where they will essentially come to your door, verify the address, and leave an entire packet that has the postcard, how to do it, all of those ways, and the paper form will be included right from the get-go.
Oh, well, that's good. That's new information. Good. I was assuming it was just going to be a postcard. Yeah. Keep going, Jerry.
That will also be the case if you're in an identified zone that has poor broadband internet access. That's another reason that you would get the whole packet initially instead of waiting to get the paper form later. If you are in an identified area with poor internet service, you will get the paper form immediately as well. So in most states, 95% of the people only get the postcard. But in a lot of our rural counties, it's more like we have about 30-35% in some counties that will get the whole packet initially.
Okay.
And that will be the case on all of our reservations.
Thanks.
That they'll get the whole packet right away.
So I want to suggest if you're just beginning to talk to your staff about this, you should maybe start by looking right at the census questionnaire itself, and you can view a copy of it online. And if you need these links, I'd be happy to send all this information to you. Just contact me. Have all your staff and volunteers complete the form just as a practice, as if they're, and that way they can have a discussion and questions. You can ask your census partnership specialist. I'm going to show you how to contact your complete count committee and your census partnership specialist later today, so that before we get to March, when it comes time to start helping patrons with the census form, you're already familiar with it. So it won't take more than 10 minutes in your next staff meeting to go through this and kind of alleviate people's fears and help them become familiar. It's a very, very simple form. So that's how I suggest you get started. But here's the reason why you should care about the U.S. Census. It's a part of our U.S. Constitution. It's in Section 1 of Article 2. And it's how we get our voting sort of set up. Who represents us, the representation. This is generally referred to as apportionment. And so here in Montana, we have, all of our Senate districts, our House of Representatives in the state districts, all of our national representatives are, of course, we're always going to have 2 senators, but it is possible we could have more than one representative in the state of Montana. So it's very important for people to participate and for a complete count for Montana, a complete and accurate count. So we've been working in state with the Montana Census and Economic Information Center, and they tell us that the census is how money is delivered, federal money, to our state as well. And they estimate that around $5 trillion, or nearly $2,000 per person per year, comes into our state as a result of the census. So the amount of money that Montana gets for federal programs is determined also by this number. So it's important to count everyone. Imagine $2,000 per person per year. That's over the next 10 years. So that's $20,000 total for every person that we don't count in Montana that should be counted. So there's no reason to leave that money on the table. And of course, much of that money does eventually come to our local communities and to our libraries, because that's money that supports programs that we do at the state library as well. So one more slide about why we should bother to care. And that's that we may actually reclaim a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, the one that Montana lost in 1990. And, there's a certain number of representatives that's now capped. Used to be in the olden days, you get more population, you'd get a new representative, and they'd add a new seat to Congress. They don't do that anymore. Now they reapportion the existing seats. So in order for Montana to reclaim that seat, and it's entirely possible that we can, we just need to get a really good complete count. So a lot of folks have been asking about what's new and why is the state library making such a big deal about the census. It's because, as Jerry said, there's an expectation that a large percentage of people in certain areas and folks who have internet at home will be able to complete the form online. They can also do it by making a phone call. So paper forms are not going to be mailed to everyone, and a postcard and a notice and a reminder postcard will be mailed to every household for those people who have a street address. And we'll talk some more about that in a bit. And let's see. There is reduced funding this year with the US Census Bureau. They don't have as much money to send out follow-up enumerators. So they need all the help they can get. I think that's fair to say. And there are fewer communities that will have door-to-door census takers. So Jerry or Jihan, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I want to say, yes, there is less funding than there was in 2010, but we do have the funding to do proper enumeration. It is just it's just that we're also in like less than 3% unemployment rates in Montana, so we're having a hard time hiring for the enumerators. And we really would like them to be from the communities that they're enumerating in, but we're quite frankly having a hard time hiring enumerators. So the idea is to get them to self-respond early. And that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is significantly less expensive. But number two, when you are answering sort of anonymously online or on your own form, you tend to get a lot better data. When it comes to, there's a lot of reasons that people are uncomfortable answering the survey when they're being questioned with somebody at the door. So, for example, if you are living in an apartment and there's only 2 people on the lease, but there are 4 people living there, if they're telling it to someone, they're much more likely to say there's only 2 people living there. So for all of those reasons, even though we do not give our information to anyone at any time, and that's part of Section 13 and part of the constitutional law that that information cannot go anywhere, people still feel uncomfortable. So it's a couple of things. It's mostly we want them to self-respond because it's better data. It's less expensive, and quite honestly, we're having a hard time finding the enumerators to do that follow-up door-to-door work if you don't do it on your own. That being said, we are hiring up to 4,000 people in Montana to do that work. So that's another way that we really need help, is to encourage people to apply for those jobs.
Very nice segue, because I did want to move right into what's the library's role. So as a librarian, you can make your public computers and Wi-Fi available. Some libraries are considering during our census week or during the month of April to just setting aside one computer that's census only, and helping patrons get access to the census form. So making sure that you have signage around your computers or a link on the desktop that makes it easy for them to access it. Of course, you'll need to refer patrons for help if they have questions about how to complete the form. And that's what we have partnership specialists for. And there is an 800 number that you'll be able to call. It hasn't been made, at least last time I checked, and I have to admit it, I didn't check to this week. That 800 number wasn't available yet. Once I have it, I'll share it with everybody, probably shortly after the new year. We want you to be able to direct patrons to different language versions of the form and to provide programs to help inform your community about the importance of the census and dispel myths that people might have about it, including, as Jerry pointed out, that somehow this is a way for the government to collect a bunch of individual information about individuals, which is specifically prohibited by law. The Census Bureau can't share with anyone that there are 4 people living in an apartment that's only supposed to have 2. They just can't. So that's one of those myths that you can help dispel. I should add to this list, and this has been coming up, several of our libraries have been working with their local partnership specialists on the hiring and helping to promote the hiring of census enumerators for this big job that we have to do in 2020. Some of them have been sites where people who are applying for census jobs can come in and get fingerprinted because they have to go through a background check. So that's one of the roles the libraries can do. I had a library just contact me, it was about 10 days ago, to say that somebody had asked about using the library for fingerprinting, and they were a little suspicious about it. They said, "Is this for real?" I said, "It's totally legit." So if you get called by a member of the US Census, you can always, we're going to talk about that, by the way, how to make sure that the person you're talking to is actually from the US Census. Another good area for you to help people with and provide programming for. We know that librarians have expressed to us that their patrons may be concerned about data privacy. So this is the backbone of what Jerry was saying, that the Census Bureau cannot share individual information with any other organization, including federal law enforcement organizations. They can't do that either. So it's Title 13 of the U.S. Code. The data is only for statistical use, and Title 44 of the U.S. Code, that the full census data released to the National Archives, it's only released when it's 72 years old. So hopefully for people like me, I won't be around then. So if you've ever done genealogical research, you know how valuable this data is as it ages. But for the immediate future, individual information is just not available. And Jerry, anything else you want to say about that? Shihan?
No, I think you covered it well.
So we know that
all sounds good.
we have also heard from librarians that you're concerned that you expect your patrons might worry about it taking too long. And if you look at the form, you will quickly dispel that myth because it's 9 pretty easy questions for the primary respondent and 7 follow-up questions for everybody else in the household. So people will tell you, well, come in and say, I don't want to fill out the form. There's nothing in it for me. Well, that's $2,000 per year for every person in that household in federal funding that will go to some other state, not Montana. I mean, it's not like the federal government's going to suddenly spend less money. They're actually going to just reapportion that to another state. So that's our infrastructure and our healthcare and our education. So it's certainly important. And there is a benefit, a direct benefit to everyone. Fair and accurate voting districts. I mean, how important is it to be represented? Probably in a democracy, one of the most important things. And of course, I keep mentioning this, but we could double our representation in the U.S. House of Representatives. We do a good job with this. So what if your patron says, I don't want the government to have any information about me? And that's understandable. It's really important to just quietly reinforce that by law, residents are required to truthfully complete the census. But incomplete forms are counted and none of their personal information can be released. You can just reinforce that message gently, and that can have a really big impact. So on to the nitty-gritty. This is a photograph of the postcard that I received in October, inviting me to be a census worker. So thanks, Jerry and Jihan, for you're already getting out there. And many of you may have received one as well, but this is not the same postcard you're going to get next year, of course. Addresses have been updated across the state of Montana. In fact, your state library, because we are the GIS specialists in our state, we actually were helping last summer to assist the Census Bureau and the Center for Economic Information, Census and Economic Information in Montana with trying to create databases and provide GIS information to help them update addresses, because that's the first step of the census, and that's pretty well complete now. So now we're moving on to hiring people, so that in March these postcards will be mailed to households. And as Jerry pointed out, they'll actually get a postcard and a reminder postcard. And for those of us like me who do not get rural delivery, and I don't have a street address for my letters, letters don't get delivered to me at home. I have to go to a post office box. I will get a packet on my at my door. So looking forward to that in March or early April. And then April 1st is referred to as Census Day. So as you're counting, you count the people who are in your household on April 1st. So that doesn't matter if you submit your form on March 30th, you count the people who will be in your home on April 1st. And if you submit your form toward the end of this process in June, you count the people that were residing in your home on April 1st. So a lot of questions do come up over who exactly you should count. I mean, you can imagine all kinds of scenarios where a person dies on April 1st, or a person is born on April 1st, or a person is traveling on April 1st, or a person is away for a period of time in the military or at college on April 1st. And there's plenty of information on how to answer all those questions. And we will direct you to that information online, but it is not your job as a librarian to answer everybody's question or to determine who lawfully should be counted and who should not. You can refer those folks to someone who is trained via that 800 number to get those questions answered. So this process continues through July of next year, where forms may continue to be submitted. So it's not just that that first day of April that everybody has to be counted on that day. It's that they get counted throughout the next few months so that the Census Bureau can get on with their business and make their reports, and we continue on to the next 10 years. So here's the stuff you need to know as a librarian. We have hard to count communities in the state of Montana. These are extremely rural communities. A lot of our Native American communities, our reservation lands are fit into the hard to count. The hardest one to count, I just point out that big red blotch up here. Let me get my marker if I can find it. I guess I don't know where it is these days. Oh, there it is. This one. Guess where I live? I live right there. So I live on the Blackfeet Reservation in Glacier County. So my community is hard to count. So it's very these communities are where they'll put some extra effort into trying to get a complete count. So if you have a library in one of these communities or near them, then you may want to really plan some programming in your community to try to address myths that are maybe keeping people from responding. Oh, and there's a question in the chat box. Let's see if I have any more questions I've missed. Nope. All right, from Mary Kay. No, I'm sorry, Kate Radford. Will the non-PO box verify and leave packets to be delivered at the same time as the first postcards? Oh, that's a good question. So the first postcards head out in March, and the packets will be distributed starting in March. So it may not be right at the very same time. Would that be fair to say, Jerry?
Yes, that is fair to say. It is a process, but the same with the mail. I mean, they can't mail to every household on the same day. So those will be staggered out as fast as it can be starting on March 9th. But those two processes will happen at the same time.
I was talking to my postmistress yesterday, and she told me that they're also getting training on the upcoming census. Even though we don't have rural delivery here in Montana, they're still all required to go to training as well. So they're learning about it to be able to help answer people's questions. So it's a lot going on. So you each have a complete count committee somewhere near you, and in many cases that's a county-wide complete count committee. I know in my case we have a county complete count committee, and we also have a tribal complete count committee in Glacier County, up where I live up here. And so you want to be looking out for your community's complete count committee. You might check in with your county commissioners or with county clerk, or if you have a county executive, that would be a good person to check in with to ask about it. But you can also just go online. The Montana CEIC, the Center for Economic Information, is and census information is keeping an up-to-date list of contact people for complete count committees across our state. So you can check in with them, and you can also check in with Jerry or with me. I can help you run down this information. So if you need somebody, if you have not heard from anybody yet, it's time to reach out and try to find that connection, or talk with me, and we'll get you connected to your complete count committee. In most areas, librarians are serving on, the library director is serving on that complete count committee, because they're expecting that libraries are going to be busy and doing stuff to help out with the census. So if you haven't done it yet, it's time. Don't put it off too much more, because they're meeting now and planning activities in their community. And here's the last thing I want to ask you to do today, and that is to be a census champion. And by that, here at the State Library, what we mean is just keep informed and share information with your patrons and your staff, people that you meet in the community. Look for opportunities to promote a complete count in your community. Maybe run a program. If you have senior citizen in your library, or if you have services to a senior center, you might want to plan something with them. Connect with your local complete count committee and let me know that you're the person at your library who wants to be informed. And I'm actually going to send everybody who attends today a link to the Survey Monkey that I set up about a month ago to try to get everybody to sign up to be a census champion. So Mary Kay and Kathy and all of you will get a invitation from me to complete that survey, so I'll have your name and your contact information for your library. And that way we can stay in touch. We're planning some more activities and training and resources in the new year. Any questions about that? All right, so here's the kind of programming you might want to do. Consider a program that's just about dispelling myths about the US Census, and your partnership specialist would be a great presenter for that. So maybe a brown bag at the library in February, and you can put some cookies out and invite people in. Promote participation. We have been providing libraries with a stand-up poster that they can put up at their checkout counter that says it's coming and make people aware of it. And we'll have some more resources for you in the new year. Facilitate access to the internet at your library. Make it known in your community that you do have public Wi-Fi and you do have computers and they're available. Reach out to those historically undercounted populations. Children are historically undercounted. There are still people who don't know that children are supposed to be counted on the census, so they fill out their household and count only adults, and that can result in an incomplete count for the state. Native Americans, of course, we know they're historically undercounted, and persons who are not currently living in a traditional household, and you probably know some of those communities. Do you have any other ideas or questions about what the library can and should be doing to help promote a complete count? Well, we'll move right on to Census Week at the library. Now, a lot of libraries are promoting activities on Census Day across the nation, April 1st, but April 1st just happens to be the first day of our Montana Library Association's annual conference. So right away at the state library, we realized that that presents a problem because we have so many librarians who attend that conference, which of course we don't want to discourage anyone from doing that because that's a very important conference for us here in Montana. So we had a discussion with some of our librarians who attended sessions in September and came up with the idea that during Library Week, National Library Week, April 19th through the 25th, that we could promote that as Census Week at the library and ask libraries to plan programs during that week that promote a complete count and kind of remind people if you haven't been counted, there's still plenty of time to get counted. So we're going to be issuing a press advisory and coordinating this statewide campaign at the state library. We'll be promoting it on social media, hope you will as well, and we'll provide you with more promotional materials about Census Week at the library here in Montana. And then a really great suggestion came from a group of librarians that we're training up in Sydney that we should have an It's Not Too Late to Be Counted day in June at the library. And so we've sort of set that out tentatively as June 3rd. I think that's kind of stood the test of time. You can count on that date. And we'll plan again some press advisory, statewide campaigns, promote it on social media, and provide you with promotional materials. The idea with that, it's middle of the week day. I think it's a Wednesday. It's right at the start of summer reading, which we thought, since kids are historically undercounted, that this might be a way for libraries to kind of just do a little add-on activity in their library that day to promote the census when there's a lot of people in the library anyway. So toward all of that, back in September, we created a library toolkit at the state library. And if you have not received one, then let me know and I'll be happy to mail you one. We've been sending, taking these out to Federation meetings this fall and trying to get them distributed. So let me know if you haven't got one and I'll make sure to put one in the mail to you. And Kathy has a good question. How do you count the homeless? People who are experiencing homeless when they don't have a mailing address. So I'm going to turn that over to our partnerships specialist because that's a little bit of a complicated question. There's a couple of different answers. Jerry?
So there's a few different ways that we go about this homeless population. I would say the most difficult being like somebody who's more of a couch surfer, just staying with, friends or whatever. That's sort of the hardest to deal with. And so the rule there is that if somebody is staying at your house and doesn't necessarily have somewhere else to be, they are counted with your household. Secondly, when it comes to people experiencing different kinds of homelessness, that fits into a program that happens a little bit earlier than the regular mailing, and it's called group quarters. So how a library would play into that is a lot of times when there's temporary, camps or places that people are living, that tends in April 1st in Montana weather, that tends to be not as much of a case as it is elsewhere. But we need help from community partners to identify where those locations are because they change a lot. So, this happens with other ongoing census surveys like the American Community Survey. So we do have some ideas of where they are, but they definitely change. So if there are locations where people live, out almost like outside or tent villages or any of those kind of things, we need help identifying those. And then we do actually send enumerators out to those locations, almost like not really formally announced because then they tend to disappear. So we do have a program in place to go to those locations. We also rely heavily on service providers that work closely with a homeless or transient population, and that is food banks and those kind of things. We will do enumeration or help folks fill out surveys in those service-based organizations that work with homeless. So it's actually a process and built into the timeline, but that's mainly how it's done, is that they would be enumerated like at the food bank or at the shelter and use that as their address.
And if somebody comes into the library and they don't have a mailing address because they're experiencing homeless, living out of their car, which is not at all unusual in Montana in April, then I would call that 800 number and get an answer for how to help them get counted. So
yeah, and it is really as simple as maybe where they park their car, and that's the address you use, and then they fill it out.
But you don't have to answer that question for a person who comes in. You just have to help them access the form and give them access to somebody online or on the phone who can help them. So
Absolutely.
yeah, but as long as they just remind somebody, yeah, you do get counted. You don't have to have an address to get, you don't have to have a physical house you live in to be counted. You're still here. It's people who are here in the living in the United States who get counted. So I've created a web page for our to kind of keep updated information and have lots of links for you at on our website at State Library. And you can find this in the Learning Portal. So if you go to learning.msl.mt.gov, that's learning.msl for Montana State Library.mt.gov, you can get to this page. And if you have suggestions for me on links I might want to add to that page or more information, just let me know. There will be a link to a recording of this webinar there as well. There's already one from the previous version of this webinar that we did. And then I have a suggestion for you on a fun program that you can do next spring, and that is with your kids' programs or a family event. You can invite people to come into your library for a photo op and bring everyone in their family who wasn't here on April 1st, 2010. So either they've moved here to the state, my first Montana census, so maybe they were counted someplace else, or maybe they were born. So this is a great activity to do with kids. And this little coloring page is on our website, and you can print these out, have kids color their little top hat, attach it to a stick, hold it up over their head, and they can all get their picture taken together somewhere in the library. So fun little idea is to do a photo op. There's another way to do this is to make a great big frame and put the Montana Census logo or the US Census Bureau logo on it and have everybody stand inside the frame. So it could be a whole family picture with any of the children, any child under 10 in the picture. So anybody who was born after April 1st, 2010. So that's a fun little activity you can do. And let's see, you might want to get a student nurse to help out with Census Week, because it turns out the nursing program at Montana State, their community health activity, the students who are doing public health internships this spring are looking for places they can go to help with the complete count, because getting complete count is a healthcare issue, a public health issue. And so they've been assigned, all the student nurses are assigned to do something as part of their internship to help promote a complete count in Montana. So you'll find information about this program on our website as well. Another partnership we've created in the state to help with promoting a complete count in Montana. So if you're interested in getting a student nurse, they can come in and do programs. They are getting their own training on the census from the nursing program, so they can come in and talk about the implications for public health when Montana is undercounted. So lots of good ideas there. So if you're looking for programming, check in with that. And that is really all I have for you today. I just, a few updates will be coming down the pike in January and February, so watch for a follow-up webinar on that. We're also planning to do a follow-up webinar with our partnership specialists here in Montana, so they can talk to you a little bit about what the Census Bureau is promoting nationally, so you can get kind of the inside scoop on that. So that we haven't scheduled that yet for January, but we will soon, and then we'll get the word out on that. So any other questions or concerns, ideas? And I'm going to go ahead and, unless you have anything else to add, Jerry, I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording.
Oh, I just wanted to point out that you can actually view the questionnaire. There
Yes.
is a actual questionnaire, and I think You have it on your website, a link to it, but it kind of gives you an idea of how easy it is. And as you said earlier, they will have the URL, and the 1-800 number will become available after the first of the year.
Yeah, this is a sample question form, and it says sample, do not use. So there will be just put the link in the chat box so people can find it. But if you have, and it is also on my website, but it really use it for training purposes. I wouldn't recommend you go out and print a whole bunch of these and wait for the actual form, official one, to be released after the first of the year. So we'll be sending you that information. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to stop our recording, but we'll stay online in case anybody has any additional questions or concerns. Thanks, and do be sure to let me know that if you're the census champion for your library. We need one in every single public library.